All right, so we are set to start the show. This will be the start of the Breeding Gilt show here at the Cheyenne Livestock Expo. Coming into the ring now is Class 1 Berkshire Breeding Gilts. In this class is Savannah Hinton, Allie Souls, Kylie Hackbart, Braden Day, and Emma Ott. Weights in this class range from 140 pounds to 219 pounds. Attention in the hog barn. The Berkshire Breeding Gilts are in the ring right now. And so, Duroc, this will be your first call. There's only 5 of the Berkshires, so this won't take very long. So, Duroc Gilt, please start making your way towards the holding pen. And also, white AOBs, you can start making your way towards the holding pen as well, because there's not very many Durocs. So, white AOBs, start getting it on your mind as well.
Well, we had a really good market hog show to work through, and as we get started back up with the Breeding Gilt show, I think we've got an exceptional pair of Berkshires, and I think the young lady's champion. This is a really special kind of Berkshire Gilt, big rib, big bodied, really attractive through the front 1/3 of her body. She's soft and pliable, yet maintains good proportions. She's athletic out of her hip and hind leg. I think that's a really, really good representative of the Berkshire breed to go ahead and be your champion. My compliments to her and her family on a job well done. Young man's or Gilt here, excuse me, that's going to be reserve. I think you could say a lot of the same things. I'm impressed with this set of Berkshire Gilts here on the top end. Another one that's attractive through the front 1/3 of her body. She's got shape and muscle. She's maybe not quite as robust through her forerib. She's maybe not quite as secure in terms of the way she hinges and goes out of her hip and rear leg. That's getting critical on an awfully good one to go ahead and be reserve here. Young lady's Gilt right here in front of me is going to be third. I like her pattern. I like her build. I like just the silhouette that this Gilt paints from the side view profile in comparison to the 2 Gilts ahead of her. She's not as good through the midsection of her body. She's not as heavy structured. Again, though, a really nice individual to go ahead and be in 3. Young lady right there is going to be 4. Young lady right behind me is going to be 5. Both very, very heavy muscled Gilts. Almost works to their disadvantage, just a fraction. They're a little tighter in terms of their spine. They're a little tighter in terms of their rear skeleton. Certainly admire them from a muscle and shape perspective. They've just got to be looser hinged in a breeding Gilt setting for me today. A good way to get started. Let's put our hands together. Congratulate those young people on the Berkshire Gilt.
Results of Class 1 Berkshire Breeding Gilts. 5th place is Savannah Hinton. 4th is Allie Souls. 3rd, Kylie Hackbart. 2nd is Braden Day. And 1st is Emma Ott. That was our only class of Berkshire Gilt, so that will serve as a breed division. So this will be class number 2, Duroc Breeding Gilts, our only class of Durocs as well. In this class is Kylie Pfeiffer, Paisley Mills, Luke Charles, J.D. Shoup, Jolion Taveros, and Kylie Pfeiffer with a 2nd. Weights in this class range from 130 pounds to 415 pounds.
Well, I think a really impressive set of these red gilts here on the top end. I'm going to use the young man's gilt right here in the orange shirt to be your class winner and your champion. I think a gilt, just from a structural integrity standpoint, does so many things right. And then I think when you start talking about pounding on extras, she's the boldest chested, she's the heaviest boned, still very appropriate in terms of the way she utilizes her hip and rear leg. I think that's a very, very good Duroc gilt to go ahead and win this particular drive. Young ladies gilt right there in the center is going to go ahead and be in second. When this one came out of the holding pens there early in the class, I thought, man, she'll be tough to beat because she's very proportionate in terms of length to height ratio. She's a good rib, good bodied kind of gilt. It's really fresh and muscular when I get right on top of her. Pound for pound, when we compare her to the little gilt, I don't think she's quite as bold in her chest. I don't think she's quite as heavy structured when we study her forearm and her foot size. But man, her proportions, her look, her center rib and center body, all those things are very, very good. Young man brings us the big gilt here, and obviously just a little challenging to analyze. I think this is a pretty good kind of a Duroc gilt, but maybe past prime just a little bit in terms of her show career. I'll be honest with you, I got a lot of sows that aren't this big at home, so it makes it a little challenging to analyze her in a show ring setting. Flat back, good shouldered kind of gilt. I guess for me, when I got right in behind her, she was a little flatter in terms of the flare to her hip and stifle. Looks like a good kind of Duroc sow if the young man wants to take her home and put her into production. The gilt that comes next, the gilt that's just a little paler skinned, certainly like from just a muscle and shape perspective. She wants to sit a little lower at the point of her shoulder. She wants to be a little rounder out of her hip and rump. Then we round out with a pair of gilts that certainly big muscled kind of gilts that both need to be extended through the front 1/3 of their body, gilts that need to be a little more secure in terms of the way they go out of their hip and rear leg. Good class of those reds. My compliments to the young people. Let's give them a nice round of applause as they head back.
Results of Class 2 Duroc breeding gilts. Fifth place is Kylie Pfeiffer. Fourth, Paisley Mills. Third, Kylie Pfeiffer. Second is Jolion Taveros. And first is Luke Charles. So this will now bring us to the white AOB breeding gilts. Just one class of the white AOBs. So this will be Class 3, and in this class is Waverly Millard. Cade Jackson, Creo Spears, Waverly Millard with a second, Kinsley Curlis, Kylie Hackbart. And these weights range from 140 pounds to 320 pounds.
Just one class of these white AOBs, and I think the young man's Chester gilt wins this class and does so in a pretty commanding fashion. That's a gilt that, I talked about several today that are my kind, regardless of breed or color. This gilt's simply my kind. She's attractive ahead of her blade. She's big armed. She's soft and pliable, yet proportional through the midsection of her body. She's wide, true, and square. She goes directly away from you. She checks all the boxes from a basic fundamental standpoint. point in terms of her skeleton, and then, man, she piles on some extras in terms of shape, muscle, and width, does it all in a balanced, proportional package. That's a really good gilt to go ahead and win this particular class. The gilt that comes in two, I believe we saw her in the Market Hog show. I really like her in terms of her stoutness of skull and having a big forearm working in her. Same thing can be said. When I get right in behind her, she's a little different in terms of the shape to her hock. She's a little more refined in terms of her rear foot size and her rear ankle. I've got to stouten her up and just make her a little more secure in terms of her rear skeleton before we can consider that to be any closer. Gilt that comes in three, really a big-chested, proportional kind of gilt that I like from just a muscle and freshness standpoint. She's a little tighter hinged off of both ends of her skeleton. I just like her to relax in terms of her spine, maybe just a fraction, make her go a little more effortlessly as she goes across the arena surface out here. But again, I like her proportions. I like her extra shape and muscle. I've just got to hinge her a notch looser out here today. One that comes next, got a beautiful kind of a Yorkshire head on her. Really like her stoutness to jaw and her forearm that she's got in her. Another one that, this Yorkshire thing and getting a hip and rear leg right, certainly proven to be a challenge of late. I've got to fix that gilt from that perspective to go ahead and get her any higher. Young lady does a really nice job of getting that one presented out here. Young man's gilt that rounds out the class. Big rib, big bodied, really three-dimensional kind of a gilt. I think for all the muscle and bulk that this particular gilt has up high, foot bone and feature doesn't match down low. She's just simply got to be stouter featured. Good class of those white AOBs. A really, really good champion and class winner. My compliments to the young people. Let's give them a nice round of applause as they head back.
Results of Class 3 white AOB breeding gilts. Fifth place is Creo Spears. Fourth, Waverly Millard. Third, Waverly Miller. Second is Kinsley Curlis. And first is Cade Jackson. So this will be class number 4, dark AOB breeding gilts. And in this class is Remington Isaacs, Audrey Davis, Emma Hacker, Emma Ott, and Kylie Hackbart. Also around the barns, we do have up here at the Hog Announcer stand a set of AirPods with a pretty snazzy case. And so if you can come up and describe the case to us, we'll give you those AirPods back to you. So again, have a set of AirPods up here at the Hog Announcer stand.
Well, kind of a challenging class to kind of piece together from the standpoint of a lot of different breeds rolled into one class, and I know that that's just simply the way it goes at these particular shows. I think it's important to give the young people an opportunity to exhibit these purebred gilts, and I know as a result, sometimes we come up with these AOB classes. I thought the young lady's Hampshire gilt here just comes with more bells and whistles, really attractive gilt. About her head and neck. She's a big-armed gilt that has got still a loose kind of a rear leg working in her. You know, as we talked about her in the market hog class there, I'd like to relax her spine and just flesh her up through her forerib and midsection of her body, but I think she's still the one that comes with the extras in this particular drive. Young man Spot Gilt, I think a very good representative of that particular breed, and certainly holds her own against spotted gilts. I like her shape. I like her look. I like her muscularity. She's maybe just a little tighter hinged off of both ends of her skeleton, and I'd sure like to clean her flank and gland region up, particularly there on that right side today. But I think that's a gilt going forward. If she'll do the right things, could have a very, very bright future in the spotted ring. Young lady's Hampshire gilt that comes in three, big-chested, really soft rib, soft-centered kind of a gilt. For me, she gets a little rounder out of her hip and rump and kind of wants to just duck her pins and camp her rear leg up underneath of her. She looks like a purebred Hampshire gilt, and taking nothing away from some of the others, if she's a pedigreed Hampshire gilt, I think certainly again could hold her own within that particular division. In this setting, I've got to lengthen her hip. I've got to make her more secure in terms of the way she goes out of her hip and rear leg there. Young lady spotted gilt that comes next, one that we saw earlier in the day there in the market hog class. I like her front 2/3. I like her extra bone and muscle that she brings to the table. Too vertical in her rear pastern. She needs more cushion. She needs more give. She just needs more flex in that regard. Hereford gilt, again, a good representative of that particular breed. When we get her out here against her contemporaries today, for me, she's got to be heavier structured and just have more bone and feature. Really good class of those dark AOBs. My congratulations to the young people. Let's give them a nice round of applause.
Results of Class 4 Dark AOB breeding gilts. 5th place is Kylie Hackbart. 4th, Emma Hacker. 3rd, Emma Ott. 2nd is Remington Isaacs. And 1st is Audrey Davis. So this will be class number 5, light cross breeding gilts. Just one class of the light crosses, so this will serve as a division. In this class is Blaze Davis, Paisley Mills, J.D. Shoup, Riley Vetter, Kylie Pfeiffer, and Colton Allen. Weights in this class range from 187 pounds to 375 pounds.
Was we get into these light crosses, I think young man's Calico Gilt, again, well, one that we saw earlier in the day, and remember back to that particular class, I believe she ended up about 3rd in a really tough class, and man, in this gilt scenario, I think she absolutely knocks it out of the park. Sharp-headed, big-armed, flat-back gilt that's long out of her hip and rump. When we look back to the market hog class, she maybe wanted to tighten up just a shade behind. She comes back out here, stays fresh, stays comfortable, wins this class in a pretty commanding fashion, in my opinion. Young ladies, blue gilt that's going to go ahead and be 2. Another gilt that we saw earlier today that, man, I think fits this scenario better than maybe she did the market hog setting. Big chested, big ribbed. She's moderate in terms of her length of body and frame size. I think where she falls out for me just a shade is I've got a blender just a notch differently right there through her ham-loin junction, and then a gilt that just wants to labor just a fraction in terms of the way she goes out of her hip and rear leg. But I think that's a gilt that certainly offers some breeding value and can make some positive contributions in somebody's sow herd. White gilt comes next. Blue-eyed gilt, certainly one you like from just having some extra hair and shag standpoint. A good pattern gilt from the side view profile. You get right in behind her. She just wants to get a little wide at her hock and push her hock too far outside of her body, but certainly a gilt I like from the side view profile. Young lady does a nice job getting that one presented out here. Young lady's gilt that comes next is one that I like from a skin and hair perspective. Got really a good looking kind of a brood sow head on her. She's got a great big forearm working in her. She's another one I need to just make a little more athletic in terms of the way she goes out of her rear skeleton, but I think that's one that again offers some breeding value. Made it to the right board, certainly could maybe make the next generation better. Round out with a predominantly blue gilt right there that just needs more structure. She needs more rib and body than the young man's gilt here. Just got to be better in terms of her skeleton. I thought an excellent class of those light crosses there. Really good kind of class winner. My compliments to those young people.
Results of Class 5 light cross breeding gilts. 5th place is Paisley Mills. 4th, Riley Vetter. 3rd, J.D. Shoup. 2nd is Kylie Pfeiffer. And 1st is Blaze Davis. So this will be Class 6 of the dark cross breeding gilts. We have 6 classes of the dark crosses. So in this first class of the dark crosses is Braden Day, Remington Isaacs, Emma Ott, Cade Jackson, and Easton Walter. Weights in this class range from 107 pounds to 143 pounds. Attention in the hog barn. Park that one over. Please make your way towards the holding pen, please. Class 7 dark cross breeding gilts. Make your way towards the holding pens as well. Class 8. We just as soon have you make your way towards the holding pens as well. We're moving at a pretty good pace. And there's only four entries in Class 7. So Class 8 also start making your way towards the holding field. Come on, guys.
Well, I think a really good class with this first class of these dark cross breeding gilts. I thought this initial trio of them certainly all offered a ton of value. I feel the most comfortable with the young man there in the orange just from a skeletal build standpoint. I think she's a notch more appropriate in terms of the angle to her shoulder, cushion to her front knee, just allows her to reach and go with more comfort and athleticism out of her shoulder and front end. Good rib, good bodied, incredible kind of a hind leg. I think a gilt for that particular size and stage of the game, man, everything fits and balances so well. I think that's one that has an incredibly bright future. The gilt that comes in two, no doubt, you can make the argument that gilt maybe comes with just a notch more chest and a notch more back shape. When I step off to the side of her, she wants to get just a little more upright in terms of the angle to her blade and front end. As a result, she just doesn't go with the same kind of comfort level out of her shoulder and front end as what the young man class winner does. I think maybe you get that one toned down a fraction, and if her shoulder does the right things going forward, that's another one that, man, I think she could be a handful going down the road. Young ladies Gilt that comes 3, taking nothing away from her because, man, I told you that I thought this initial trio of them were very, very good. I love this Gilt's look up front. She's a sharp-headed, big-chested kind of Gilt that's got a really big forearm working in her. She gets a little more maybe upright in her blade, a lot like the Gilt right ahead of her. She just gets a little piecier when I get off to the side of her. She's a little higher right there in the top and spine, and then just wants to get 2 piecey right there through her ham-loin junction. But I think her extras, her look, her bone, her feature, her extra shag, she'll continue to fatten and flesh up going down the road. Man, that's another one that can get very, very good later in her show career. My compliments to the young lady. Gilt right here in front of me comes next. Ultra wide Gilt off of both ends of her skeleton. Maybe looks a little quicker in terms of her maturity pattern for me. I'd like to maybe make her a little bigger outlined and maybe not come with quite as much width at this particular stage of the game. I think maybe she needs slowed down, and certainly one that you're going to have to bring along a little slower, but I think a Gilt that could still have a bright show career going forward. Young man's Gilt that comes next. A bigger outline, longer bodied, tall-shouldered kind of Gilt. She just needs more groceries. She needs more ribs. She needs more body. She just needs more dimension. Young man does an awesome job of getting her presented out here. Really good class are those dark crosses that get started with. Let's give those young people a nice round of applause as they head back.
Results of Class 6 Dark Cross Breeding Gilts. 5th place is Easton Walter. 4th, Braden Day. 3rd, Emma Ott. 2nd is Remington Isaacs. And 1st is Cade Jackson. So this will be Class 7 Dark Cross Breeding Gilts. And in this class is J.D. Shoup, Landon Charles, Waverly Millard, and Simon Raff. Weights in this class range from 157 pounds to 160 pounds.
Well, I know maybe going a little faster, but I'll assure you that I'm taking time to make sure I get it right in my mind, and it helps a little when you've seen several of them earlier in the day. Young man's Gilt that wins this particular class was very competitive there in the Market Hog show, and I think she fits this scenario even better. Awesome skeleton, tall shoulder, big arm, enormous rear leg working in her. I talked in the Market Hog setting. I didn't know if she just had enough width or was just bulky enough in this breeding Gilt scenario. I think without a doubt she does. She wins this class pretty handily. I think a unique specimen there. Be interesting to see how things shake out here the rest of the way. Young man right here in front of me is going to go ahead and be in 2, and I love this Gilt in terms of just her look and her head and her extension up front. She's a big-armed kind of a Gilt. I think this was one that could have an incredibly bright future because she is a bigger outline Gilt, yet she's moderate in terms of her length of body. I didn't think she was quite as heavy structured as what her class winner is. Obviously, maybe not many of them are, but again, that's a Gilt that I think can have an incredibly bright future just from a look and proportionality standpoint. She just kind of gets out-horsed in terms of bone and feature here today. Young lady's wider belted Gilt there, certainly one I like just in terms of muscularity and shape and freshness up high. She needs to be softer rib ribbed and softer centered, just a bigger bodied option for me today. And we round out with a black gilt that's got tons of muscle and feature. She's just got to be more correct in terms of her hock. She's got to be more correct in terms of the way she utilizes her rear skeleton. Really good class, really interesting kind of class winner. My compliments to the young people. Let's give them a nice round of applause.
Results of Class 7 Dark Cross Breeding Gilts. Fourth place is J.D. Shoup. Third, Waverly Millard. Second is Simon Raff. And first is Landon Charles. This will now bring us to Class 8 of the Dark Cross Gilt. In this class is Cade Smith, Callie Johnson, London Ulmer, and Trey Mills. Weights in this class range from 182 pounds to 205 pounds.
Well, again, just a smaller class and a class that presents some challenges from the standpoint of, I'd like to tweak each one of these gilts just a fraction. I guess it just simply comes down to which one would I want to load up and take home, which one do I think I could utilize some parts and pieces of to make the next generation better, and that's plain and simple. The young man's gilt right here in front of me, a gilt that's got a really sharp look about her head and neck. She's got a tremendously big forearm working in her. You get right in behind her is where you need to tweak her just a little bit in terms of her hock and where her rear foot hit the ground. But, man, again, her outlying pieces, I think, allow her to be a positive contributor going forward. I thought, without a doubt, in this particular setting, that was the one that offered the most positives in this drive. Young lady's gilt that's going to be in two here. Certainly, I think, a close decision because this gilt's another one that's good about their front end design. She's got a good look about her head and neck. She's good in terms of her shoulder set. She's busted open when she comes right at me. You can make the argument that she's softer ribbed and softer centered than what our class winner is. She just gets a little too restricted on her rear too. She gets a little too vertical in terms of her rear pastern. I've got to give her a little more set and a little more cushion back there, but I think that's another gilt. You get that one mated up properly, certainly could make the next generation better. Young man's black-headed gilt comes next. I like this gilt from a proportionality standpoint. She's a moderate frame gilt that's moderate in terms of her length of body. She's adequate in terms of her shape and muscle up high. I've got to give her just more bend and flex to her rear hock, more cushion to her rear pastern, a lot like the gilt directly ahead of her, but certainly the young man needs to be complimented on a job well done out here. Young lady drives the off-belted gilt right there. Going to go ahead and be in four, and I like that gilt just in terms of shape and muscularity. Big bladed, big ended kind of a gilt. I guess in a breeding gilt scenario for me, I'd just like to make her a little looser build off of both ends of her skeleton, but certainly a gilt that still brings some positives to the table. Good class of those dark crosses there. Let's give those young people a nice round of applause.
Results of Class 8 Dark Cross Breeding Gilts. Fourth place is London Ulmer. Third, Trey Mills. Second, Callie Johnson. And first is Cade Smith. So coming into the ring now, this will be Class 9 Dark Cross Breeding Gilts. In this class is Maggie Brown, J.D. Shoup, Jake King, Cade Jackson, Hannah Seeger, and Allie Souls. Weights in this class range from 219 pounds to 238 pounds.
Well, I think maybe just a little deeper class than some of the previous classes that we've had the opportunity to work with. I think this pair of gilts that surfaces here, both very good gilts in their own right. I believe the black gilt won her class earlier in the Market Hog Show, so I think that speaks volumes to the quality that we've got to work with here. I think the belted gilt for me wins from a stoutness perspective. Starts at the tip of her nose. You study her skull, you study her jawbone. She's stouter about her head. She's got a bigger forearm working in her. You get into her forearm in the midsection of her body. She's deeper about her heart. She's more robust about her forearm. And then I think as you watch the gilts come and go, she just takes a longer, more comfortable step off of her rear too. I think that's a really nice gilt to go ahead and win this particular class. The black gilt, as I alluded to, won her class earlier today. Comes out here and certainly competitive in the breeding gilt ring as well. I think that's when you know you've got a good gilt. When they're dual purpose, they can make good market hogs, they can make good breeding gilts. I just, again, don't think she's as stout about her jaw. I don't think she's quite as big about her forearm. And then, just a little pet peeve of mine, I talked about it in the Market Hog Show. I'd sure like to clean that gilt back up through her flank and gland region there ever so slightly, and then maybe a gilt that's not quite as athletic as the gilt ahead of her, but that's getting negative because that's a sharp-looking gilt that's got a big arm. She's got a flat back. She's got a big hip and rump. She's got good flare to her hip and stifle. She's got the extra hair and shag to go with it. I thought a really good place there to be in second. I like that pair of gilts that go 1 and 2 a great deal. Good pattern, good design gilt that comes next. I like her just from a structural integrity standpoint, a gilt that gets out here and covers the surface. She's sound, she's flexible. She's certainly a gilt that you like from those attributes. She just gets outmatched by the two gilts ahead of her. She needs more width. She needs more dimension. She just needs more bulk from end to end to make that decision any closer today. Again, my compliments to the young lady. Does an awesome job of getting that gilt driven. The gilt that comes next, gilt that, again, we saw earlier in the day, big rib, big body, the gilt that's really, really fresh back. You could make the argument that of the gilts in this particular class, this one's got the biggest back. She's got the most shape up high. I think that extra muscle comes at a cost, though, as we watch this gilt go across the arena surface out here. She's just not good enough in terms of the way she hinges and goes out of her hip and rear leg. She's just got to swivel and go with more athleticism. Young lady's gilt right here is certainly one we like from a muscle standpoint. She needs more bone and feature. A lot of the same things could be said about the gilt right here. Big top, big ended, needs to be a little squarer in terms of hip hock to ground. Really good class, I thought, particularly there at the top end. Let's put our hands together and congratulate those young people.
Results of Class 9 dark cross breeding gilts. 5th place is Allie Souls. 4th is Hannah Seeger. 3rd is Maggie Brown. 2nd, Jake King. And 1st is Cade Jackson. So this will now bring us to Class 10, our second to last dark cross gilt class. And in this class is Bailey Stromberger, Peyton Swires, Emma Ott, Ryder Halley, Stetson Westmoreland, Peyton Monroe, Colin Nabuda, and Kylie Hackbart. Weights in this class range from 297 pounds to 325 pounds. I'd like to take a moment to remind everybody as well that as you make your way out of the building here today, for one, we want to thank everybody for attending and entering this year's Cheyenne Livestock Exposition. Also would like to remind everybody as well to make sure to pick up your trash. We have a lot of volunteers that are going to help tear down here today. We would like to make their job just a little easier if you could help pick up your trash and leave the area as you found it. So again, thank you for your time here in Cheyenne. Greatly appreciated if you are on your way out.
Well, I think without a doubt the deepest class of these dark cross breeding gilts we have, and I sincerely mean that. Young people 6, 7, 8, those are still good gilts. You take them home and get them mated to the right boars, and I think you can sure make the next generation better, or make yourself a nice project to come back here next year. So I think keep your head up if you're down in this class. I think an incredibly good class. I think a really, really good pair here at the top end. For me, the young man's off-belted gilt coming right here at me, I think is one that just balances and proportions so well from the side view profile, sharp about her head and neck, deep about her forerib and center portion of her body. I think where she has the advantage over the gilt that comes in two, just in terms of the way she transitions from her ham-loin junction back into her hip and stifle. Got tremendous flare to her stifle as she goes directly away from me. Good flex to her rear pastor and good bend to her hock. I think that's a really, really nice gilt to go ahead and win this particular job. The gilt that comes in two, equally a good gilt in her own right. I like her extra height, the shoulder. She's really a stout-featured gilt that's got a good head and a big forearm working in her. In comparison to the gilt right ahead of her, she's not as robust, maybe right there through her forerib in terms of just the outward curvature and shape to it. More importantly for me, she gets just a little rounder in terms of her muscle pattern. Wants to get just a little harsher right there through her ham-loin junction, but certainly admire that one for the amount of just horsepower she brings to the table. Still does it in a balanced, attractive, proportional kind of package. Good gilt. I thought that those first two were really good in this particular class. Taking nothing away from the young lady's gilt that comes in three. She's brought us a good set of pigs all day. This is a gilt from the side view profile. You can certainly dig some things about this particular female. Stout-headed, big-armed gilt that's got some rib and body. When I get right on top of her, she doesn't have the same kind of spread and shape as the two right above her. More importantly, for me, she becomes a little more mechanical in terms of the way she goes out of her hip and rear leg. I'd like to see her have just a little more flare to her hip and stifle as she goes right away as well. Gilt that comes forward, if we just judge them from a side view profile, this gilt no doubt pushes to be our class winner. I love her look ahead of her blade. I like her moderation in terms of frame size and length of body. Comes with the extra shag and fuzz that we're all trying to incorporate into our programs. At least we're trying to incorporate into ours. Where she gets beat for me, you get right in behind her. Her hock's simply not good enough. She's too puffy about her hock joint. We've got to clean her up there and just make her different in that regard. We do that. There's no doubt that she moves up potentially several spots in this class. Off-belted gilt comes next. A gilt that we saw earlier in the day there. A gilt that's got a good look ahead of her blade. She's a big-armed gilt that's got muscle and shape. I've got to give her more cushion and give and flex to her rear pastern before we can work that particular gilt any higher. But young lady's done an awesome job getting that one presented. Skin and hair is absolutely incredible. We continue to work through these. I believe, sincerely believe, good kind of gilts that made it to the right boards could, again, make a positive impact. One there needs to be more secure in terms of her hip and hind leg. One there that needs more rib and body. Then the young man's chromed up gilt just needs to have more hip and stifle as she goes directly away. Excellent, excellent class. My compliments to those exhibitors. Let's give them all a nice round of applause as they head back.
Results of Class 10 dark cross breeding gilts. 5th place is Peyton Monroe. 4th is Emma Ott. 3rd is Bailey Stromberger. 2nd, Kylie Hackbart. And 1st is Colin Nabuda. So now this brings us to our final class in the dark cross division. In this class is Braden Vetter, Cade Jackson, Jolion Taveros, Stetson Westmoreland, and Braden Day. Weights in this class range from 329 pounds to 369 pounds.
Well, you know, I talked about it in the barrel show. You get into those last couple classes, and sometimes can be a challenge to kind of piece things together because they're old and maybe things are kind of past prime. And a lot of times that's the same scenario. You get into these heavyweight gilts, no matter where you go. Sometimes they can just be old and past their prime and maybe ready to head to sow pasture. That is not the case in this scenario. This initial trio of gilts I think are dang good. I think this one that wins this particular class really special. Stout about her head, yet extended and feminine. Great big forearm working in her. So square when she drives right at you from chest, knee to ground. It's hard to make them moderate in terms of their length of body, moderate in their frame size, yet extended up front. I think those gilt, this particular gilt does all those things to a very high degree. Study her length of hip, the utilization to her rear leg. This looks like the kind to me to raise barrels, to win Texas majors, to raise boars that bring a lot of money. I certainly like that one a great deal to go ahead and win this final class. My compliments to the young man on a job well done. Young lady's gilt that comes in too. Man, this one comes out early in that particular class and hits me really hard. I thought, man, this was going to be a handful to turn because she is so proportionate. She's maybe a little safer in a couple areas, but still stout about her arm. She's really robust to her forerib and center portion of her body. She's just not as unique for me up front. She's not as stout about her head. She's not as extended from blade forward. She just doesn't have some of those far outreaching pieces that our class winner does, but that's an incredibly good gilt to go ahead and be 2. I wouldn't hang your head any way, shape, or form. I like that gilt a great deal to go ahead and be 2. Young man that comes in 3, man, if I had a pauper or a trailer and was driving home, I'd try to have all 3 of them stuffed in there because I think this one's still dang good. Tall-shouldered, flat-backed, athletic out of her hip and rear leg. Again, I just don't read this one maybe to be quite as full through her forerib in the center portion of her body. Don't read her to quite be as far out there in terms of bone and structure as the 2 we've got directly ahead of her. Again, my compliments to you. Like I said, if I had a pauper or a trailer, I'd be trying to get all 3 of them stuffed in it when I head home today because I think all 3 of those are very, very good. Taking nothing away from the young man's gilt that comes in 4, a really flexible, sound structured kind of gilt. In a show ring setting, she gets a little easier in terms of her top line. I've just got to make her balance a notch differently from the side view profile. Excuse me, and then the young man's gilt that rounds out the class there. I've just got to make that gilt more attractive about her head and neck. I thought a very, very good class. I thought the top end of that particular drive was lights out good. Let's put our hands together and congratulate those young people. Awesome set of gilts there to round out the day.
Results of Class 11 Dark Cross Gilts. 5th place is Braden Vetter. 4th, Stetson Westmoreland. 3rd is Braden Day. 2nd is Jolion Taveros. And 1st is Cade Jackson. So then now that brings us to our Dark Cross Division Drive. So coming out of Class 6, first in that class was Cade Jackson. 2nd is Remington Isaacs. Out of Class 7, first was Landon Charles. 2nd, Simon Raff. Out of Class 8, first is Cade Smith. 2nd is Callie Johnson. Out of Class 9, first is Cade Jackson. 2nd is Jake King. Out of Class 10, first is Colin Nabuda. And 2nd, Kylie Hackbart. And out of Class 11, first is Cade Jackson. And 2nd is Jolion Taveros. Once again, this is the division drive of the Dark Cross Breeding Gilts.
Well, I think an incredibly good Dark Cross Gilt show. Let's give all 6 of these young men out here a nice round of applause on their class winners. You know, I thought the top end of the barrel show was very, very good, and I know we've got a ways to go here in the Gilt show. We've got to name our breed champion, and then we've got to get your top 5 overall. But I tell you, I'm equally as impressed with this set of gilts that the young people and their families have brought to us here today. I think these Dark Crosses are good. I think there's one of them that's just differently head, bone, feature, look, presence, arm, rib cage, still athletic out of her hip and hind leg. If she was for sale, I'd be first in line to buy her. I think the kind that looks like you make championship show barrows, you make high-dollar boars. This one's simply my kind. Young man right there in the orange shirt's got her. Congratulations.
Champion Dark Cross Gilt comes out of Class 11, and that is Cade Jackson. That brings now Jolion Taveros into contention for Reserve Dark Cross.
Well, we dropped that second place Gilt out here, and I think a Gilt that certainly jumps right into contention. I never like to use the word safe, but maybe a notch safer than a couple others, and I mean that in a positive manner. And this doesn't reflect any on my decision, but I think you could breed that one to a wide variety of boars, maybe some of the more extreme boars, without getting yourself in trouble, and still making really, really good ones. I guess it comes down to her and another one, and plain and simple, if you just let me load one of the two up, I think one of them maybe just has a little more outreaching pieces in terms of foot, bone, and feature. I think pound for pound, this particular individual has as big a rear leg as we've seen all day. Market hog, Gilt setting, whatever. I think another incredibly good one. I think all the Gilts are good again, but if you just let me load up one more and take home, it's a young man in the orange right there. He's got your reserve. Congratulations.
Reserve Dark Cross comes out of class number 9, and that is Cade Jackson. Excuse me, hold on. I have that mixed up. Excuse me, yeah, hold on. Psych. Reserve is Landon Charles coming out of class 7. And so now it looks like we are set. It looks like all of our pins are loaded. And so we're ready for the supreme drive of the Breeding Gilt Show of the 2024 Cheyenne Livestock Expo. And so our representatives out of each breed, out of the light crosses, champion was Blaze Davis. Out of the dark AOBs, champion was Audrey Davis. Out of the white AOBs, Cade Jackson had the champion. Out of the Duroc Gilts, champion was Luke Charles. Out of the Berkshire Gilts, champion is Emma Ott. And out of the dark crossbreds, champion is Cade Jackson. So once again, this is the supreme drive of the Breeding Gilt Show. And once again, I'd like to thank our judge for the afternoon, Will Hilty of Mount Pleasant, Pennsylvania, where he grew up on a diversified livestock farm exhibiting cattle and pigs throughout his 4-H years. He now owns and operates Hilty Show Pigs, which consists of 150 crossbred sows, with his wife Callie and their daughters Kinley and Kenna. Will has judged shows from coast to coast, including San Antonio, Oklahoma Youth Expo, Tulsa State Fair, Indiana State Fair, and the Iowa State Fair, as well as the North American in Louisville, Kentucky, and the Exposition. In his free time, he enjoys spending time with his family and friends, fishing, watching Steelers football, and attending livestock shows. Once again, big thank you to Will Hilty, our judge of the Market Hog and the Breeding Gilt shows.
Well, I certainly appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and sincerely mean that, man, this has been a well-run show. Hats off to the people behind the scenes organizing things, getting things put together here. I thought things moved along in a timely fashion, and were very well organized. Again, you know, as we did earlier, I won't get quite as long-winded, but it's not easy to put one of these on. It takes a ton of time, a ton of money, and a ton of work on the back end of it. I promise you that these people here making this happen, they might take a day or two off, but after that, they're going to start thinking about making this thing even better next year. So once again, as we did earlier, let's put our hands together, thank the people who have given our youth this opportunity out here today. I thought the barrel show was incredibly good on the top end. It would be interesting if we brought the barrows and gilts back together and picked a supreme overall, because there's one out here that absolutely lights me up. Stout featured, proportional, good looking, big rib, big bodied, still is incredibly good in terms of her hip and hind leg for one that comes with that many extras. Again, simply my kind. I think this one's very, very special. Young man right here in the orange has got your champion. Congratulations.
And the champion breeding gilt at the 2024 Cheyenne Livestock Expo comes out of the dark cross division. That is Cade Jackson. Also, Mr. Hilty, to make your day better, the score is 34-24 Steelers.
Well, certainly good news from back east. My Steelers are on the upward trajectory there, looks like, and hopefully going to give some of these teams a run for their money as we go through the rest of the season. Last time I'll take the microphone for today. Man, I've enjoyed my time here. Again, I can't say enough about the facility, the show, how well it's run, and to be honest with you, I knew it would be good, but the barrows, the market hogs, and the gilts certainly have exceeded my expectations. I think the top end of these things go anywhere in the country and get competitive. I sincerely mean that. Again, plain and simple, it comes down to if I had a popper or a trailer, which one of these would I be wanting to load up and take home with me today? There's one out here that I think pound for pound has the biggest rear leg of anything we've seen, barrows or gilts all weekend. I think an incredibly unique specimen, not the bulkiest, not the biggest chested, but man, where she's good, she's incredibly, incredibly good. I like the young man's gilt right here in front of me to be reserved. Congratulations.
The reserve champion breeding gilt goes to Landon Charles, also out of the dark cross division. And our champion light cross will be third overall from Blaze Davis. Fourth overall goes to the champion Duroc of Luke Charles. And fifth overall goes to the champion white AOB, and that is Cade Jackson. Once again, congratulations to all of our hog exhibitors, to all exhibitors throughout the barn. Want to give a big congratulations and a huge thank you to all of you for entering this year's Cheyenne Livestock Exposition. We appreciate everybody's participation, and we hope to see everybody next year. Once again, thank you to everyone.